In the desolate expanse of the desert, where the scorching sun blisters the earth and shadows stretch far beyond sight, there are tales that refuse to be buried. These are not mere whispers. These are the stories of those who ventured into the vast emptiness, only to be consumed by its ancient, unforgiving hunger. From cursed caravans that vanish into the sands to faces that appear in the swirling storms, these true desert horrors are not of fiction, but of lived terror. Prepare to hear the chilling accounts of those who faced the desert's darkest secrets, if you dare. The desert has long been a place of mystery, beauty, and terror, and for good reason. Beneath the endless stretch of sand and sky, the desert hides secrets that have driven many men to madness, leaving only echoes of their once vibrant souls. The harsh landscape, scorched by the relentless sun, seems to play tricks on the mind, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. In this collection of chilling, true desert horror stories, we delve into the eerie, unexplained events that have occurred in the world's most unforgiving terrain. These are the stories of brave souls who ventured into the unknown, only to find themselves trapped in a world where the laws of nature no longer apply. Some believed they were chasing fortune. Others sought knowledge, but all were swept away by the desert's cruel grip. From the mirage of a life-saving oasis that never materializes to the whispers of lost souls calling out from the shifting sands, these terrifying encounters will make you question the very nature of the desert. Each tale brings with it an unsettling mystery. Stories of the lost, the vanished, and the impossible. Are they simply tricks of the mind? Or is there something far darker waiting beneath the surface? Now, as you listen to these chilling, true stories, remember, the desert never forgets. It keeps its secrets close, and for some, it never lets them go. Keep reading, keep listening, and uncover the horrors that lurk in the vast, silent wasteland, if you dare. Story number 1, June 10th, 1898. The desert, it seems, has taken a cruel and malevolent turn. The sun's wrath is unforgiving, but it is the night that has truly unsettled me. I have walked across these barren plains for days, my canteen nearly drained, my feet raw and blistered, the dry air choking my throat. The Mojave is a vast, inhospitable land, indifferent to all who enter its grasp. Yet, it was on the night of the 9th that I first began to sense something amiss. Something that could not be attributed to the harsh environment or the fatigue clouding my mind. It began with a faint sound. I had settled for the night, huddling beneath the scant shade of a lone, twisted Joshua tree. The winds, as they often do, stirred the sands in soft whispers, so it seemed at first. The desert was alive with its customary symphony, the rustling of the wind, the occasional crackle of dry branches, the distant call of a coyote. But then the whispers grew. They were not the casual murmurs of the wind. No, these were voices, distinct, clear, and maddeningly close. I strained to listen, convinced my mind was playing tricks. Yet, as I lay there in the stillness of the night, I swore I heard it clearly. Thomas. My name, spoken in a voice that was not my own, echoed through the night, rolling across the dunes like a chill wind. I sat up, heart hammering in my chest, my hand reaching instinctively for my revolver. Nothing but the endless stretch of sand lay before me. The moon shone pale and full overhead, casting an eerie glow upon the earth. The voice, my name, was gone. Perhaps it was the wind after all, playing tricks on my ears, but I could not shake the feeling that I was not alone. Something watched from the depths of the dunes. I could not tell what it was, but it was there, beneath the shifting sands. Each gust of wind seemed to stir something deeper beneath the earth, something ancient and hungry. As the hours passed, the whispers returned, this time not just calling my name, but beckoning me. "Come closer, Thomas." I resisted the impulse to follow. Something in my gut told me to stay where I was, yet the strange compulsion to move was overpowering. The ground beneath me trembled, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. A shadow stretched across the desert, not from any physical presence, but from something darker, something that lurked just beyond the edge of my vision. The stars, once a comforting guide above, now seemed cold and indifferent. They burned with a pale, unnatural light, their gaze fixed elsewhere, far from me. Even the night seemed hostile. The wind howled, its voice now joined by something else, soft, rasping breath as if something beneath the earth was drawing air through ancient, forgotten tunnels. It was then I realized I had become the prey, and the desert was the hunter. As the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, their words now unmistakable, calling not just my name but describing my every movement, my every thought. "You are not alone, Thomas," they said. "You will never leave." My heart pounded in my chest, but my legs, betrayed by fatigue, would not carry me. I glanced at my canteen. It was nearly empty, and my throat burned with thirst. The moon hung overhead, watching me, its light cold and mocking. I was isolated, lost, and the very earth beneath me seemed to thirst for something more than my blood. The shadows gathered around me, swirling like the sands themselves, darkening the desert with their relentless pursuit. At times, I could see movement, slow, deliberate, like something slithering beneath the surface of the dunes. It was growing nearer. I am not alone. There is something here, something that calls the desert its home, and it will not let me leave. The whispers tell me that I am to join it, to become one with the desert, but I will not succumb. Tomorrow I will try to make my way back to the nearest settlement, but I know, deep down, that I am being watched, that it is only a matter of time before the desert consumes me completely. And if I do not make it, if my bones are found scattered amongst these endless dunes, then let it be known that something ancient, something unfathomable, moves beneath the sands. And I heard its call. June 11th, 1898. I write this now in haste. I have made the decision to leave, my camp behind and attempt to walk toward the horizon. But even as I write, I feel its presence again. The whispers have not stopped, though they have faded into an almost unbearable silence, broken only by the faintest rustle of the sand. The ground shifts beneath me, and something moves just beyond the reach of my vision. The voices have returned. Once more. Now. They speak to me not from the wind, but from deep within the dunes. I am certain of it. I know it is only a matter of time before they drag me down to join them. If you find this journal, know that I am lost to the Mojave, and there are things here that should never be disturbed. Thomas Adley. Story number 2. July 13th, 1902. Dear Samuel, I hope this letter finds you well, though I fear what I am about to write may trouble you deeply. It is not the heat or the dust of the desert that weighs on my mind, but something far more sinister, something that cannot be explained by reason. Last night, I witnessed something that has left me shaken to my core. It was near midnight when I first noticed it. From my window, I could see the dim outline of Devil's Mesa, those craggy cliffs, rising out of the barren landscape like the bones of some long-dead giant. The moon was high, casting a pale, almost unnatural light over the land. And then I saw it, a flickering light, moving slowly across the rocky face of the mesa. I thought at first it was a campfire, perhaps a traveler lost in the night. But there was something wrong about it. The light bobbed and swayed as if carried by someone walking, but there were no sounds of footsteps, no crackling of firewood. It moved too steadily, too purposefully, as if it were not a human hand guiding it. My mind was filled with thoughts of the old stories grandfather used to tell us, the ones about the lost surveyor who vanished years ago while mapping these very hills. Grandfather says that the surveyor's soul is now cursed to wander these mesas for all eternity, seeking redemption for a mistake he made that led to his death. The lantern, Grandfather says, is his light, forever searching. But, Samuel, I cannot help but feel that there is more to it than that. The lantern, if that's what it was, did not follow a natural path. It seemed to move toward the cattle pens, where our herd has been grazing. I tried to shake the feeling that something was wrong, but as the lantern drew nearer to the cattle, I could hear an unsettling sound in the air, like a low hum, a vibration in the bones of the earth itself. It was as if the land itself was alive, holding its breath. I don't know how long I watched, but eventually, the light seemed to disappear, vanishing into the darkness with no trace. The stillness that followed was absolute, the desert holding its secrets as it always does. This morning, I went to the pens to check on the cattle, though I feared what I might find. I have no words for what I saw. The cattle were gone, every single one of them. Not a sound, not a cry in the night, not a single hoof print left behind, except for one. In the dry earth around the pens, there were tracks, hoof prints, yes, but they circled as though the cattle had been herded around in a maddening, endless loop. The prints were deep, as if the animals had been running in panic, but they led nowhere. There were no bodies, nothing. I have searched the area thoroughly, Samuel. The mesa is vast, and though I called out and waited, I found nothing. Not a single sign of the herd. Only the tracks, always circling, always twisting back on themselves. Grandfather says that the mesa hungers. He says that the land calls to those who are near, pulling them into its depths, never to be seen again. I am beginning to think he may be right. There is something unnatural about this place, something older and darker than I had ever imagined. It is as if the mesa itself is alive, drawing from the life around it, feeding on the living. I fear it. Has claimed the cattle, Samuel, and I fear that it may come for me next. I am writing to you now, asking you to come home. I do not wish to be alone here anymore. I cannot stay much longer if this continues. The lantern, the lights, the sounds, they are becoming more frequent, more insistent. I believe the land is alive, and it calls to those who wander too near. Please come quickly. I do not wish to see another night fall with the mesa watching. From afar, its hunger unsated. Yours faithfully, Sarah Willoughby. Story number 3, July 27th, 1887. Sheriff's Report, Dead Man's Gulch, New Mexico Territory. I, Sheriff Edward Beaumont, write this report to document the events that transpired on the evening of July 26th, when I responded to the strange cries that echoed through Dead Man's Gulch. What I found there cannot be explained by any logical means, and I fear what we encountered is not of this world. The night had already fallen heavy, casting long shadows over the narrow valley as I and my deputies approached the gulch. The usual desert sounds were absent, replaced by an eerie, almost suffocating silence. It was then that we heard it. The wails, distant at first, but growing louder with each step we took. They were not the sounds of any animal or human being I had ever heard. They were hollow, guttural, as though some ancient soul were crying out from beyond the grave. We proceeded cautiously, our lanterns casting flickering light on the rough terrain. The cries grew louder still, seeming to come from the depths of the gulch itself. It was then we noticed the tracks. The ground was soft in some places, and here we found prints, barefoot, deep and wide, as though the feet of some giant or lost soul had left their mark. The prints led us into a narrow cleft in the stone, a crevice so tight that a man could hardly pass through without scraping his shoulders on the jagged rock. We hesitated, but the wails continued, urging us forward. As we entered the cleft, the temperature seemed to drop sharply. The air was cold, colder than the desert should ever be, and it carried a strange, musty scent that I cannot rightly describe. It was as if we had stepped into a tomb, a place that had not seen the light of day in centuries. My breath came out in clouds of mist, though the night air was warm outside. We pressed on, the wailing still reverberating through the stone. The sound grew distorted now, as though it was bouncing off the very walls of the gulch, coming from all directions. My deputy, Weston, stumbled and nearly dropped his lantern when a scraping sound echoed through the air. It came from the blackness, beyond our light, from somewhere deep within the cleft. It was the sound of something moving, dragging itself across stone, slow and deliberate. At that moment, a cold chill gripped my spine. I ordered my men to stop, to wait, but we could not see what was ahead of us in the darkness beyond the reach of our lantern's light. The scraping grew louder, more frantic. It was as if whatever was lurking in the dark knew we were there, and it was preparing to come closer. Weston insisted we go no further. "Sheriff, we need to leave. We don't know what's down there," he said, his voice tight with fear. Agreed, though I had little desire to venture further into the blackness. As we turned to leave, the wailing intensified, now joined by a low growl, deep and menacing. The ground beneath our feet seemed to tremble, as though the earth itself were warning us to leave. We hurried back toward the entrance of the gulch, the eerie sounds following us as we went. The tracks, which had led us into the cleft, now seemed to disappear into the rocks as though they were never there. But as we reached the mouth of the gulch, Weston, the youngest of my deputies, swore he saw something move just beyond the light of our lanterns. Something pale, something that was not human. He swore it followed us until we crossed the threshold of the gulch, and then it vanished into the night. We did not speak much as we made our way back to town. The wails continued, fading with the wind, but always there, haunting the very air. I cannot say what we encountered that night in Deadman's Gulch. I have seen many strange things in my years as a lawman, but nothing that came close to what we heard and felt in that cursed place. The town folks speak of Deadman's Gulch as a place of ill omen, where the souls of the lost wander forever. Now, I believe they speak the truth. I am not a man easily frightened, but I would not wish to return to that place, not for all the gold in the territory. And I fear the day may come when the thing we heard in the gulch calls out once again, and this time, it will not be so easy to leave. Story number 4, April 15th, 1911. I write now with a troubled heart, for I have uncovered something in the desert that I cannot explain. It is a discovery that has shaken me to my very core. I had come to the Mojave to study the peculiarities of the Joshua trees, to record their growth and behavior in the harsh, unforgiving environment of the desert. I did not expect to find what I did today. As I explored the arid landscape, I ventured deeper into a grove of Joshua trees, those twisted, ancient figures that rise like silent sentinels against the endless horizon. Their branches, knotted and strange, gave the land an almost otherworldly feeling. It was there, beneath the gnarled roots of one particularly large tree, that I discovered the bones. At first, I thought it was some animal, perhaps a deer or coyote, long dead and left to be reclaimed by the earth. But upon closer inspection, I found the bones to be human, broken, scattered, and strangely entangled within the roots of the tree, as though the tree itself had grown around them. There was no sign of burial, no evidence of a grave. The bones were simply there, as if they had been placed with care, or perhaps had been there for far longer than the tree had stood. The sight disturbed me greatly. The bones were bleached white by the sun, but still I could not help but feel the weight of some ancient sorrow pressing upon me. The land here is old, Samuel, older than I can comprehend, and it is as though the desert has claimed something from this poor soul. The bones, wrapped in the twisted roots of the Joshua tree, seemed to suggest that the desert had taken them in as part of its eternal grasp, hiding them from the world. I could not bring myself to remove the bones, not yet. There was something about them, something unsettling in the way they were arranged that made me pause. It is as though the tree itself had claimed them as its own, as if they were meant to stay here in the silence of the desert. Perhaps they were meant to be hidden, left to rest in peace, but I do not believe I can leave them undisturbed. I will return tomorrow to examine them further. April 16th, 1911. I returned to the Joshua tree at dusk. The sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the desert, and the air had grown cool and thick with the scent of earth and dry grass. As I approached the tree, I felt a sudden chill, an unnatural coldness that seemed to emanate from the roots, from the very bones themselves. It was as though the desert itself had drawn a deep breath and was holding it in anticipation. I set to work carefully, attempting to disentangle the bones from the roots. But as my hands touched the ancient, brittle bones, I heard a sound, a rattling, soft at first, like the dry rustling of leaves, but then louder, as if the bones themselves were moving, grinding against each other. I froze. The air grew still, and the noise ceased. I glanced around, but there was no wind, no movement in the trees. Yet, there it was again, another rattle, this time louder, coming from the roots themselves. The Joshua tree's limbs began to sway, but there was no breeze to make them move. They bent and twisted as though guided by unseen hands, and I swear, Samuel, that in the moonlight the branches seemed to reach toward me. It was as though the tree itself were trying to communicate, urging me to leave, to let the bones rest in peace. I stood there, unable to move, feeling the coldness of the desert closing in around me. The sound of the rattling grew louder, more frantic, and the tree's limbs stretched further out, as if grasping for something just beyond reach. I had never experienced such a sensation before, a feeling of being watched, of being drawn into something I could not understand. In that moment, I felt the overwhelming sense that the bones were not just a forgotten relic of a lost life. No, Samuel. They were a warning, a reminder of something ancient, something that the land had claimed and kept hidden for reasons I cannot fathom. The desert, I now believe, holds more than just the bones of the dead. It holds the restless spirits of those who have vanished into its vast emptiness, and it will not let them go. I fled from the tree in haste, leaving the bones undisturbed. I know I cannot return. Whatever lives in the desert, whatever ancient forces are at work beneath the roots of those trees, is not something I wish to understand further. April 17th, 1911. I have decided to leave the desert. There is something here that I cannot explain, something far beyond the natural world. The bones beneath the Joshua tree are not the only mystery. No, Samuel, the land itself seems to pulse with an unnatural life, and the trees, they seem to watch, to listen, and to move when no one is looking. I cannot stay any longer. I will make my way back to civilization tomorrow. Perhaps in time, I will find the courage to return and study the bones more closely. But for now, I must leave. The desert has its secrets, and it is not a place for a man like me to uncover them. Story number 5. March 3rd, 1924. It is a sound I can never forget, a scream that tears through the stillness of the night like a knife through flesh. It is the scream that wakes us all, every new moon, without fail. I have heard it so many times that it no longer startles me. It is a part of the nights now, as constant as the wind that sweeps across the salt flats. But I am no fool, Samuel. I know the truth. Something is wrong out there. Something no one will speak of aloud. The foreman, Senor Ortega, insists that it is nothing more than the salt cracking in the cold of night, the desert's usual song. He says the land shifts, and the salt fields make strange sounds, creaking and cracking as they settle under the weight of the night air. He says this to reassure us, to make us believe that the sound is natural, that we are safe. But no one believes him, least of all me. Last night, as the moon rose high and pale over the salt flats, the scream came again. We had just finished our work for the day, and most of the men had settled around the campfire, tired from the labor. We sat in silence, the firelight flickering, casting long shadows on the salt. I tried to ignore it, but the scream pierced, the air sharp and desperate. It rose up from the flats as if the very earth were crying out in agony. It was always the same, the scream of a man in pain, a cry for help that would echo through the flat land for miles, carrying on the wind, fading into the silence of the night. But this time, something was different. This time, it did not fade. Juan, a young man from the south, was the first to react. He stood up from the fire, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. "It came from the flats," he said, his voice shaking. "I'll go see what it is." None of us dared stop him. We all knew the scream was no trick of the wind, and no matter how much we wished it were, we could not deny it. We watched Juan walk toward the salt flats, his lantern swinging in the dark. The flat expanse stretched out before him, the ground shimmering with a cold, unnatural glow from the moon. He moved steadily at first, but as he reached the water's edge, something in his step faltered. His lantern light flickered, and for a moment we thought we saw something moving out there in the distance, something tall and dark, shifting just out of view. But then the lantern's light dimmed, and Juan vanished into the blackness, swallowed by the flats. We waited in silence, the crackling of the fire the only sound in the air. An hour passed, then 2. the scream never returned. Instead, a heavy, suffocating silence took its place, as if the world itself was holding its breath. At dawn, when the first light of morning crept across the land, we went to look for him. My heart was heavy as we crossed the salt flats, following the faint trail Juan had left behind. The air was cold, colder than it had been in the night, and the salt beneath our boots crunched with each step. We reached the water's edge, and that is where we found his boots. They were lying there, as though he had simply abandoned them in the sand. But there was something deeply wrong. The boots were filled with salt, packed tightly as though someone had poured it into them. But there was no sign of Juan, no footprints leading away, no trace of his body. We searched for hours, but it was as if he had vanished into the earth itself. We found no blood, no signs of a struggle, only those boots filled with salt. And the feeling, Samuel, I cannot explain it, the feeling that something was watching us, something hidden just beyond our sight, something that had taken Juan and would never let him go. When we returned to camp, Senor Ortega said nothing. He gave his usual explanation that the salt cracks and the cold wind plays tricks with our senses. He told us to get back to work and not speak of it again. But I could see in his eyes that he knew the truth. He knows something is out there, something beneath the flats. We all do. I do not know how much longer I can stay here, Samuel. The flats are vast and the desert is silent, but I fear there is something alive beneath the salt, something that waits for the new moon to call out again. And if I am not careful, I fear it will come for me too. Story number 6. August 18th, 1895. I sat with an old Bedouin elder this evening beneath the stars, the desert winds whispering around us, carrying with them a sense of ancient silence. His name is Omar, and his face is weathered by the sun. His eyes dark and full of stories, though few words ever leave his lips. But tonight, as the cool desert air settled around us, he shared a tale that chilled me to the bone. There was once a caravan, he began, his voice soft yet heavy with a sorrow I could not place. A long time ago, it passed through the Sinai desert, laden with gold. The men who traveled with it were from distant lands, traders of great wealth. They sought to cross the desert's vast expanse to deliver their precious cargo to the far-off cities. But they did not know what the desert hides beneath its shifting sands. Omar paused, his gaze distant, as if he were reliving the memory, though he was not part of it himself. I could feel the weight of his words settling over me, a heavy presence in the still night. They were fools, he continued, for the desert is a cruel and merciless place. It does not yield its treasures without demanding something in return. The caravan, it seemed, had ignored the warnings of the elders, of those who know the ways of the land. They ventured into the dunes, their camels laden with gold, believing they would conquer the vast emptiness that stretches from one horizon to the other. But the desert, the desert has a hunger. I leaned forward, my heart quickening, sensing that Omar was leading me into a story darker than I had imagined. On the fourth night, as the moon rose high over the dunes, a strange noise filled the air, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. At first, it was faint, like the wind stirring the sands. But then, the braying of camels pierced the night, echoing across the endless stretches of sand. It was a sound of terror, a cry for help that filled the air. The caravan had vanished, just like that, into the dunes. Omar's eyes grew harder, the weight of the memory still evident in them. the camels, were not heard again, but their cries lingered in the winds. When the sun rose the next morning, there was no sign of the caravan, no tracks, no movement, nothing but the sound of the wind and the silence of the dunes. But the desert had not forgotten. He looked me directly in the eyes, his voice steady. Now. For days after, travelers and nomads who wandered close to that place began to find coins scattered across the sand. Not just any coins, but gold, warm to the touch, as though it had just been taken from a fresh grave. They were the coins from the caravan, but no man dared take them, for they knew the price of such greed. I sat in silence, trying to understand. But where did the caravan go? What happened to them? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper, afraid that asking might summon something from the dark. Omar shook his head slowly, his expression darkening. The desert keeps its secrets. No one knows what happened to the men, the camels, or the gold. All who followed the sounds of the camels braying were lost, never to return. They said the desert calls to those who seek what is not theirs, and none of them came back to tell the tale. He paused again, his eyes seeming to look beyond me, as if seeing something in the endless stretch of the desert. Some say the souls of those who vanished with the caravan still roam the dunes, their restless spirits caught between this world and the next, calling out for someone to take the gold that was left behind. But those who listen to the call, who follow the coins, are never seen again. Omar's voice grew quieter, as though he were sharing a secret only the desert could understand. The caravan was lost to the desert, but the desert does not forget. It keeps what is buried within its sands, and sometimes it calls for more. Story number 7. October 22nd, 1905, to the sheriff. I write this in haste, hoping you receive it before the sun sets again. The events I witnessed today have left me shaken, and I'm not sure what to make of them. A stranger came into camp at sundown, and I fear that his presence was no mere coincidence. There is something unnatural about him, something that lingers in the air long after he is gone. He appeared out of the desert, as if emerging from the very earth itself. His face was veiled, but even through the cloth, I could see the darkness in his eyes. They were black, Sheriff, black as pitch, as though no light could ever touch them. His gaze seemed to pierce through me, and I felt a coldness, an unnatural stillness in my bones when I looked into them. I've seen many men in my time, but none whose eyes held such emptiness. He approached us just as we were gathering water for the evening. The well had been dry for days, but we had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that it might still offer something. He asked for water, his voice low and rough, like it had not been used in years. We offered him what little we had, but when he took a drink, the well seemed to drain faster than it should have, leaving us with nothing but a dry pit once again. It was as if the water had vanished the moment it touched his lips. The stranger said nothing about this. He only thanked us and stepped back, turning his gaze toward the horizon. There was something strange in the way he moved. His steps were slow, deliberate, as if he were weighed down by something unseen. But when he spoke again, his words were chilling. He asked about the salt pans. "Do you know the way?" he asked, his voice quiet but carrying an edge of finality to it. "I must reach them." None of us answered immediately. The salt pans were a place of legend, a barren stretch of land where nothing lived. It was said that those who ventured too far into them never returned. Still, there was no reason not to share directions, so we gave him the best we could. He nodded in silence and began to walk toward the salt pans, his cloak trailing behind him like some shadow from the deep desert. After he left, we stood there for a long time, watching him fade into the distance. The sun was setting, casting long, creeping shadows across the camp. I felt a sudden unease, an almost instinctual fear. It was as if the land itself had grown colder with his presence. We did not speak of it at the time, but I could not shake the feeling that something had gone wrong, something beyond our understanding. It was when the last rays of daylight had all but disappeared that we went to check the well. There, in the fading light, we found something, his footprints deep in the earth around the dry well. They were strange, though. They didn't look like the footprints of a man. The shapes of his steps were distorted, as though the ground had been pressed down by something far heavier than a man should be. His footprints led into the salt pans. We debated among ourselves whether to follow them, but then a chill swept over us. We all felt it at the same time, a coldness that seeped into the air, into our very bones. And just as quickly, the feeling was gone, as if it had never been there. But I knew, Sheriff, that something was wrong. We cannot explain what we saw, and I fear what we did not see. None of us followed the path he took into the salt pans. That would have been madness. And yet, when we awoke this morning, we found his footprints still there, leading toward the salt flats, and then nothing. No sign of him. Not even the faintest trace of where he had gone. The desert had swallowed him whole. There is no sign of him now, Sheriff, but I swear to you the fear he left behind is real. The men here do not speak of it, but I see it in their eyes. No one who walks that path into the salt pans returns. I do not know if the stranger was human, but there is something about him, about the way he moved, that tells me he is not like the rest of us. He is a part of the desert, something older than time itself. Perhaps he is the desert's keeper, or something far worse. I do not know if I will stay here much longer. If you are able, please send word or come yourself. I have a feeling the desert is calling for something. I do not want to find out what it is. Story number 8. July 12th, 1868. The storm has come. I write this now, though I am unsure whether I will live to see the morning. The wind howls like a beast, and the sand lashes against the wagon with such force that it feels like knives cutting into the wood. Pa says to stay low, to stay inside, but I cannot help but look out through the small gap in the canvas. The sand is everywhere, whipping, stinging, swirling in a red haze that fills the sky and blurs the earth. It's like the very desert has risen up against us, angry and alive. I've never seen anything like it before. The storm is not like the ones we've had in the past. It is too fierce, too relentless. Pa tried to keep us calm, saying that we've weathered worse. He tells me that the storm will pass, that the morning will bring clear skies. But I do not believe him. There is something different about this one, something unnatural. I looked out again, my heart hammering in my chest. The swirling red sand distorts everything, twisting the world into shapes that make no sense. And then I saw them, faces pale and ghastly, staring at me from the storm. I don't know how they appeared, but I saw them clearly. Grinning faces, twisted in unnatural smiles, their mouths moving, mouthing silent words. Words I could not hear over the roar of the wind. I tried to turn away, but the faces followed, always just beyond the veil of the sand, leering at me. I screamed for Pa, but the sound was lost in the wind. He came rushing over, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. He must have seen them too, though he would not say so. He muttered something under his breath about the lost and those who wander the desert, but I did not hear it clearly. He was too frightened to speak plainly. Pa says we should stay low, that we should wait for the storm to pass. But I feel it now, a coldness that has settled over the wagon, creeping in through the cracks in the wood. I have never felt such a chill in the desert heat. It is as if something is watching us, waiting. The storm is not just the wind and the sand. It feels like a presence, an ancient one, pulling us into the depths of the desert. The storm howls, louder now, as if it is closing in on us. The sand beats against the wagon with a fury that makes it feel as though the very earth is shaking. I cannot tell how long it has been since the storm began, but it feels like days, not hours. Pa says we must be patient, but I do not know how much longer I can stand the dark silence that has settled around us. Every now and then, I hear a soft, whispering sound, almost like a voice calling from far away. But when I look out again, all I see is the storm, endless and relentless. When it passes, we will go out and see what is left. The storm is so strong that it has hidden everything, even the horizon. I cannot see beyond the walls of the wagon, cannot even tell where the sand ends and the sky begins. We do not know if we are the only ones left. Perhaps the storm has taken others, like it did with the faces I saw. Perhaps we are the last ones, and the desert is keeping us here, hiding us from the world. Or perhaps when the storm clears, we will find something more terrifying than we can imagine. I fear what we will find when the sand settles, when the storm finally stops. Story number 9, April 12th, 1930. It is with great reluctance that I write these words. The events that transpired during our excavation near the petroglyphs in Utah are not only beyond explanation, but also beyond belief. I feel compelled to record what happened, though I am not sure I will ever fully understand it myself. The discovery we made, or rather, the discovery we disturbed, has left us haunted by something ancient, something evil. We camped in a remote valley, close to a series of petroglyphs, strange carvings etched into the rocks by a people long gone. The figures depicted in those carvings were unlike any I had ever seen before. Some were human-like, but others were twisted, inhuman, distorted, into shapes that seemed both animal and something else entirely. There was an unsettling feeling in the air as we examined them, an oppressive weight that hung over us, as if the land itself were holding its breath. I do not think I need to tell you how weary we were from the long days of digging and studying, but as the sun dipped below the horizon on that first night, we gathered around the campfire. The desert night was cold, and the air was thick with the scent of earth and dry grass. As we sat in the firelight, we began to speak of the petroglyphs and the people who had carved them. None of us could explain their meaning, but all of us agreed on one thing: there was something wrong about them. By the time the fire had burned, down low, the shadows cast by the flickering flames seemed to stretch unnaturally long, twisting and flickering in ways that made the figures on the rocks appear to move, if only for a brief moment. I attributed it to the nature of the fire, to the tricks it played on the eyes, but still I could not shake the feeling that something was watching us. That night, as we all settled into our tents, I tried to dismiss my growing unease, but sleep did not come easily. There was a strange restlessness in the air, a heaviness that made my limbs feel leaden and my thoughts sluggish. Suddenly, in the dead of night, a scream pierced the stillness of the desert. It was a sound that made the blood freeze in your veins, the kind of scream that only comes when someone is face to face with a terror too great to comprehend. It was Jenkins. Poor Jenkins. His scream came from his tent, a sound so raw and terrified that it woke us all instantly. We rushed to his side, finding him trembling in his bedroll, his eyes wide and filled with horror. He babbled incoherently, pointing toward the dark desert, beyond our camp, but it took some time before he could calm himself enough to speak. When he did, his words made no sense at first. "It came in. It crawled inside," he muttered. I saw it, crawling, dark and thin, like something from the shadows. He claimed that something had crawled into his tent during the night, something that moved with an unnatural speed, something that was not human. He described it as having skin like old leather, dry and cracked, and eyes that were deep voids, black pits that stared through him. He said it whispered to him in a language he could not understand, and the next thing he knew, it had vanished into the night. All that was left in his tent was a patch of dry, cracked skin, lying in a heap on the ground, as if it had been shed by whatever monstrous thing had visited him. I would like to dismiss Jenkins' account as the result of too much fatigue and stress, but the evidence we found left me uneasy. The skin he described was unlike anything I had ever seen, old and brittle, like something that had been exposed to the elements for centuries. We searched the camp, but there were no tracks, no sign of anything that could explain what he had seen. It was as if the thing had simply disappeared into thin air. As the days passed, the unease among us grew. I tried to convince myself that Jenkins had imagined the whole ordeal, that his fear had warped his perception. But I could not ignore the strange feeling that the petroglyphs had somehow awakened something in the desert, something that had been lying dormant for centuries. The night after Jenkins' experience, none of us could sleep. We kept hearing things, whispers, scratching sounds, like something moving just beyond the firelight. It was as though the night itself had come alive, pressing in on us, closing us off from the rest of the world. The shadows on the rocks seemed to shift, the figures carved into the stone appearing to twist and contort in ways that were impossible, as if they were alive. In the morning, we packed up quickly. No one spoke of it aloud, but we all knew. Something had been awakened in that place, and we would not stay to discover what it was. We left the petroglyphs behind, but I cannot escape the feeling that whatever we disturbed still watches, waiting for the next fool to stumble upon it. Story number 10. April 9th, 1883. For 3 days now, we have chased the mirage of an oasis. We march across the barren sands of the Sahara, the scorching sun beating down on us, and yet, each time we draw near, the vision of the oasis vanishes, slipping away into the heat and dust. All that remains is a flat, endless sea of scorched earth and the faintest trace of what might have been water. The mirage mocks us, drifting just beyond our reach like a cruel jest. We know that mirages are a trick of the desert, visions brought on by the intense heat, distorting the air to make us see things that are not there. But this is different. It is as if the mirage is alive, moving of its own accord. Each time we approach, the oasis seems to shift farther, retreating further into the distance, and each time, the thirst gnaws deeper within us, gnawing at our very souls. Private Milligan, the youngest of my men, insists that it is the work of a jinn, a spirit of the desert, come to lead us astray. He speaks of ancient tales, of desert demons that prey on the minds of the lost, luring them with promises of water before taking their sanity and their lives. I have laughed at his words, dismissed them as the ramblings of a frightened soldier, but I cannot deny that something about this pursuit feels unnatural. The land itself feels hostile, alive with something that does not want us here. As the days pass, I feel the pull of the desert creeping deeper into my thoughts. The men grow restless, their morale sinking lower with each false hope of the oasis. We have run out of rations and the water supply is nearly gone. The desert has stripped us of everything except our thirst, and yet we press on, desperate to reach the oasis that continues to elude us. April the 10th, 1883. The men are beginning to crack under the pressure. Milligan's talk of gins grows louder with each passing hour, but I refuse to let such nonsense take root in my mind. However, even I am not immune to the strange sensation that we are not alone. Last night, as we lay beneath the stars, I heard something, a soft whisper, just at the edge of my hearing. At first, I thought it was one of the men speaking, but when I turned, I saw nothing. And then, as clear as the desert wind, I heard it again. This time, it was unmistakable. Someone was calling my name. But it was not my name as I know it. It was a voice, low and familiar, saying the name of someone I have not heard in many years. My mother. The words came from the darkness, from the very heart of the desert, and they chilled me to the bone. I know not how it came to be, but the desert has a way of bending time and space. Perhaps it was a trick of the mind, of exhaustion and thirst, but I cannot shake the feeling that we are being watched, hunted. The desert knows our names, and I fear it calls to us for a reason. April 11th, 1883. We have been walking for what feels like eternity. The mirage always ahead, always slipping away. The sun is merciless, beating down on us with a relentless fury. My men are exhausted, their spirits broken by the endless chase, and I too feel the weight of the desert bearing down on me. But I cannot stop. We cannot stop. We must reach the oasis, or we will die in this barren wasteland. Milligan speaks no more of gins, but I see the fear in his eyes, and the others are not far behind. The fear is like a sickness now, creeping into their hearts, twisting their thoughts. And I am no different. The desert is not just a place of sand and heat. It is a place of the mind, where reality and illusion blur, and we are at the mercy of forces older than the world itself. Last night, I heard the whisper again. This time it was closer, more insistent. "Come, Robert," it called, using my full name as if it knew me. The voice was my mother's, but it was not her. It could not be. I know her voice well, and this was a hollow imitation, something that spoke from a place beyond the living. The desert is hungry. It is calling to us, but I do not know what it wants. This morning, we found something strange. There, in the sand, was a footprint, fresh, large, and human, but it was unlike any we had seen before. It was too deep, too wide, and yet we are alone in this desert. There are no other travelers, no tribes, no life of any kind. Just the wind, the sand, and the mirage. I fear that the desert itself has become our enemy, that we are not simply lost, but hunted. The mirage is not a mere illusion. It is a lure, drawing us deeper into its trap. And I feel it now. The presence, the force behind the whisper, the eyes watching us from the distance, waiting. April 12th, 1883. I write this with trembling hands. The desert has taken us, and we are not returning. Last night, the whisper grew louder, more frantic. It was no longer just my mother's voice, it was all of their voices, the voices of those long gone, calling us by name. When we awoke this morning, the mirage was gone. In its place, there was only sand, endless and unbroken. We are lost in a world of nothingness, but I now understand. We were never meant to reach the oasis. We were never meant to escape. I fear the Jinn Milligan spoke of, for I now believe that we are trapped, and the desert will never release us. There is no hope, only the slow and inevitable descent into madness, as we are hunted by the very sands beneath our feet. Stay tuned as we unravel more tales of desert horror that will chill you to the bone. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-tingling content. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What's your scariest desert encounter? And hit that notification bell to never miss a new tale of terror from the heart of the world's most unforgiving landscapes.